They say that in life, the only two things that are guaranteed are death and taxes. And today on the Midweek Move, we're talking about both of those. Hello and welcome to the Midweek Move, podcast attention to the healing place of the podcast, where we examine the scriptures line by line, verse by verse, and ask ourselves what is happening here. Today, ladies and gentlemen, joined once again with Carlos Renfro. How you doing, sir?
Hey, thanks for inviting me here. I like it here.
I'm glad to have you here. Oh, man, Carlos, I'm excited with you, man, because we are continuing the journey through the book of Mark. We are so close to the end, but as we get to the end,
Mark 12 is kind of long.
Man, it is kind of long, but there's so much happening in it. And if you guys haven't been following along, first off, hit the playlist on YouTube so you can see the entire series on the book of Mark. But we talked about the parable of tenants. And then this week, we're talking about a couple of questions that Jesus was asked.
Yeah.
And not in a fun, friendly, like, hey, Jesus, what do you think about this? But kind of in a derogatory way. This comes on the heels of last week's conversation directly where Jesus gives the parable to the Sanhedrin, and they're like, oh, he's calling us out. We're going to
reapproach this.
Yeah, and they leave. So let's jump into it. Verse 13. Carlos, can you read that for me?
Verse 13. Then they sent him some of the Pharisees and the Herodians to catch him in his words.
All right. So again, after the run-in, the day before with them, they sent a group to confront Jesus. It's interesting, these two groups, because they're Pharisees and Herodians.
Right.
And they're kind of like, they don't like each other.
Yeah, it's
but they're teaming up against Jesus, which is interesting.
The enemy of my enemy is my friend.
I guess so.
It's like what are these two guys doing here?
Not the unity I was expecting that day, but it is. But so for context, Herodians were people, we've talked about this before on the show, but for a reminder for folks, Herodians were people that were in political power that they believed that those who should rule Israel should come from the line of Herod, and thus being under Roman occupation, Roman control. The Pharisees were far more religious. And they believed in the Davidic line,
right?
Which on paper makes it sound very holy, but unfortunately, it's more a matter of then they'll have more power. Less about.
I'm about to say because the Pharisees were also interested in political power as well. Exactly. And that's kind of where this marriage kind of comes together here.
Exactly, and so it was a unity of interest, just not good ones. But anyways, these two are now coming to Jesus to confront him, and as it says, to how did your translation put it? What did it say?
Is it to catch him in his words? I'm in the New King James Version if anybody's reading along.
So he's New King James. I'm using the English Standard Version. It says to trap him in his talk. Either way, they're trying to catch him in this situation here. All right, let's continue on. If you could read verse 14 for us.
Verse 14. And when they had come, they said to him, Teacher, so funny. Teacher, we know that you are true and you care about no one.
Lord.
For you do not regard the person of men, but teach the way of God in truth. Is it lawful to pay taxes to Caesar or not?
Okay, so first off, little underhanded way of conversation, like they're not.
I mean, you're going to butter him up out there. If you read the beginning of this chapter, you're really going to start this conversation by trying to butter him up.
Right. So, but they're asking a question. This question is designed to put Jesus kind of in a corner.
Yeah.
If he says no, then he is like the zealots, people who openly rebel against the Roman rule, thus giving opportunity for the Romans to come in and do some stuff. But if he says yes, then in the eyes of the very Jewish crowd, puts him in the camp of the Herodians.
Right, because then you also have to, and this goes all the way back to the triumphal entry that we talked about earlier in the podcast. It goes all the way back to the misunderstanding and the misinterpretation of the motives of the people for why Jesus was coming into Jerusalem. A lot of people were believing that he was coming in to overthrow Rome and to restore the kingdom back to Israel. So for him to turn around and say, pay tribute to Rome would be very, very disappointing to the majority of the people.
Exactly. So it's kind of put him in this weird spot. But let's see how Jesus responds. If you can read 15 through 17 for us. 15,
shall we pay or shall we not pay? But he, knowing their hypocrisy, said to them, why do you test me? Bring me a denarius that I may see it. So they brought it, and he said to them, whose image and inscription is this? And they said to him, Caesar's. And Jesus said to them, render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God's. and they marveled at him.
All right. So Jesus is not going to fall for the trap they've set up for him. He understands the hypocrisy that's taking place. The fact that they could easily produce one of Caesar's coins told all present that they themselves acknowledge Caesar's authority, but also the obligation to pay taxes.
Right.
The Pharisees, they complained about having to pay taxes, but they still did it. Like, this was kind of a cultural thing. They weren't like the zealots who were like, we're not doing it at all, and became criminals.
Right.
And so Jesus, again, reading the hypocrisy, he's going, all right, look,
right.
You're carrying the dude's face in your pocket.
Right. He brought them back into their own line of questioning.
Right.
trying to make him look like the rebel and trying to make him look like the hypocrite. He roped them back into their own little trap there.
Exactly.
I could kind of see the disciples in the back going, yeah.
It's like that meme where it was like, oh.
Yeah.
All right, so here's a question for you. Jesus' response: render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, and to God the things that are God. What does this statement Jesus tell us about our relationship that really like applies to how we view our government?
Yeah. In this time and hour in this date now, that can be a touchy and a sticky subject. Even in America, when it comes to the separation of what do we do about our government and what do we do when it comes to our spiritual walk. And Jesus just kind of makes a distinction between the two. He's like, well, there are civil authorities and there are civil rules and laws, and there are spiritual rules and laws, and obeying the law and obeying what's in front of you doesn't negate their spiritual duty or spiritual opportunity to do what's right in the eyes of God. Right. Those things don't necessarily have to overlap. You can pay your taxes and honor God.
Yeah, exactly.
You can be a good law-abiding citizen and be a good follower of Christ at the same time.
Right.
And so Jesus, you're going into a realm where you're trying to overlap two things that don't necessarily in this context don't have anything to do with each other. Pay your stinking taxes and stay on the right side of the law and be a good Christian at the same time.
Exactly. It is something we can do both at the same time.
Yeah.
As long as the law is not asking you to do something that is anti-biblical.
Yeah.
But we've talked about the places about honoring authority and what authority has for us. Paying your taxes is not anti-biblical.
No.
There's nothing in the scriptures does God say, hey, don't pay taxes.
Right. Yeah.
It's just not a thing. So he's putting us, for the Pharisees, he's saying, just do what you need to do. But for us, 2020, like, you got to pay taxes, guys. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you.
If you came here looking for a reason to not pay your taxes, you're on the wrong podcast. I apologize.
Exactly. All right, let's continue on. So the fun just keeps happening right here. Read verse 18 for us.
Verse 18, there's some Sadducees who were there, who say there is no resurrection, came to him, and they asked him, saying...
All right, so pause right there for a second. The Sadducees were a small but influential group. They were likely wealthy.
Yep.
They were likely the kind of middle upper class individuals. But unlike the Pharisees, they also didn't hold to any oral traditions. So the Pharisees, they held to the midrash and all that kind of stuff. But the other interesting thing, and this is something I didn't understand until I studied out recently, while they held to the Tanakh, the Old Testament, they put more emphasis on the Pentateuch, the first 5 books, over the rest of the Bible, the rest of the Old Testament. Pharisees, they said the entire thing, boom, A to Z, that's authoritative for us, plus the midrash and other things. Sadducees, unless it was there. And so this is a very specific thing taking place in here. So my question for you, the question they asked, that they are about to ask Jesus, deals with the resurrection.
Yes.
Yet Mark makes it very clear that they didn't believe in the resurrection themselves. How does this information shape how we should read their question? Is it possible that they're asking a genuine question to learn, or is it more likely this is yet another mocking question?
Well, considering that this is considered a legitimate faction here, that this is kind of like, this is the Sadducee gang here,
right?
And their approach to religion, to faith, to how people worship God is organized around their core belief. Chances are they're not going to be coming to Jesus with with an opportunity to learn something about something they don't believe in.
Exactly.
Chances are they're going to try to challenge him on what he says he's believed so they can trap him.
Right.
This seems to be a little bit of a reoccurring thing when it comes to these guys and talking to Jesus.
Exactly.
So you can kind of see their motives based off of their presuppositions and their predetermined belief that they don't believe in a resurrection. So why are they asking Jesus about the resurrection?
Exactly. And I'm asking Carlos to help us have this frame of context. We have to ask these questions sometimes.
Yeah.
When we're reading some stuff, we have to be careful, because again, we're trying to read into the scriptures motives and stuff, which we can do with logical evidence that's before us. But we need to also be careful not to read our own emotions into it,
Right.
our own assumptions, our own motives for doing certain things into the scriptures. But when we have a pretty solid understanding of what the motives are, it makes what we read more dynamic. I think some people struggle to read the Bible because they're like, well, it's just flat. I was like, well, if you're reading it like teacher Moses wrote for us, like it's got to sound flat regardless. Right. But when you have the mindset of emotion,
right, being in that time, in that place, in the minds of those people that were saying and hearing
exactly, it comes alive for us. The Bible suddenly becomes a very 3D thing for us to experience.
Right. And I find that easier to do even in these narrative type of writings like the Gospel. It's a lot easier.
Totally. Absolutely. I love just a quick resource out for you guys. If you have, I have a software called Logos, and some of the translations you can buy for the Bible, it actually has a little markers by the verses. And so it'll tell you who's speaking and who's the actual listening crowd.
Yeah.
So you can kind of keep track of it. But I want to encourage you guys, when you read the Bible, keep track of who's in the room. Yep. Jesus is still in a crowd of people, of fellow Jewish individuals. And now we have the Sadducee leaders coming up asking questions. So this is who's in the room. And again, this is them trying to, this is kind of a double-handed. One, it's like, all right, what you thinking, Jesus? Right. And at the same time, it puts a couple things. One, for those who are hardcore, we believe in the resurrection. If he denies it, it's going to be a problem for them. But at the same time, it could make people go, oh, well, maybe this resurrection thing isn't real. And then pull people to their own side. Yeah. So there's a lot taking place here.
A whole lot. Motives. Just remember motives. That's the key phrase for today's episode. Remember motives.
Yep. All right. Verse 19 through 23. Can you read that for us?
Verse 19. Teacher, Moses wrote to us that if a man's brother dies, he leaves his wife behind and leaves no children. His brother should take his wife and raise up offspring for his brother. Now, there were 7 brothers. They go through a lot of trouble to make up this scenario here. This is a very complex scenario. All right, back to verse 20. Now, there were 7 brothers. The first took a wife, and dying, he left no offspring. Then the second took her, and he died, nor did he leave any offspring. And the third likewise. So the 7 had her and left no offspring. Last of all, the woman died also. Therefore, in the resurrection, when they rise, whose wife shall she be? For all 7 had her as wife.
All right. So first off, I want to put this out there. And this is a mild pet peeve, so please indulge me for a second. I have seen brothers and sisters in Christ who are from different theological backgrounds create just as ridiculous hypothetical situations to catch other people in awkward moments, like just trying to think through things, creating what is known as a what is it called? False dichotomy situations. If you are creating these scenarios for the sake of your argumentation, you are as stupid as the Sadducees. I don't know what other word to call you right now.
Right. If you can't come up with a legit, livable, real world example or something that's legitimately plausible to make a theological or biblical argument, what are you doing? You're reaching. I mean, this is what they're doing here.
Yeah. You're no longer practicing intellectual exercises and genuine academic growth. Right. You are simply trying to win an argument, and you're dishonoring the Lord when you do that.
Right. Yeah.
And that's what these guys are. They believe in God, in Yahweh, but they're dishonoring him to the nth degree by creating these ridiculous situations. Yeah. I mean, it makes me sick to my stomach when I see this stuff happening.
It's the people that asking God make a rock that he can't pick up.
Yeah. It's like, what?
Like, we're being disingenuous here.
It's like, anyways, that's what's taking place here, guys. This is a ridiculous question that they probably created as a way to make fun of the resurrection and make fun of people that have it. In their mindsets, Jesus can't answer this without agreeing with them that the resurrection is simply just ridiculous. So we continue this conversation. I want to say this real quick. I had a conversation with a guy like this. He brought up a ridiculous question, and he was trying to pose it in a situation, a life and death situation of protecting people, and then there's a third object in the room that is harmful, and asking what you're going to do about it. His mindset was so warped because he wasn't there to have a legitimate conversation with us. It was just to win an argument.
Yeah.
And you could tell he was smirking when he said this.
Right.
Because you could tell he's won argumentations with us before. And so when I read this, I see this guy in this situation.
Right.
And when I walk through him with him, the error in his thinking, he didn't leave in a way of, oh man, I've been thinking wrong. His heart was already hardened in a situation where he's like, I'm not looking for a real answer. I just want to prove you wrong. I want you to agree with me.
Right.
That's what these guys are doing.
Yeah. They're given towards illusion and they're committed to it.
Exactly. And so the question becomes, how do we handle this? And I think Jesus handles it in a really great way. I want you guys to listen deep, because this kind of argumentation takes place regularly today. And if it well, I'm sorry, guys. I don't want to see you guys get lost in the rabbit trail of arguing yourselves like this, but also when you're in a situation where you have somebody ignorant doing this, especially in front of non-believers, people who are struggling with their faith, you need to figure out how to walk this appropriately.
Yeah.
And what we're about to read literally is a biblical response to the situation. So let's go rock this.
So good.
24 through 25.
All right. Verse 24, Jesus answered and said to them, are you not therefore mistaken because you do not know the scriptures nor the power of God? For when they rise from the dead, they neither marry nor are they given to marriage, but are like the angels in heaven.
Okay. So Jesus pauses and goes, hey, look, you guys have lost the plot. And he says that they're missing it for two reasons. Their understanding of the actual scriptures, but also their understanding of the power of God, the experiential aspect of who God is. And he handles things in the first end with the supernatural thing. So he's reaffirming the idea of resurrection in his words here. But at the same time, he corrects the idea that multiple things that they're denying. Like one of the things the Sadducees deny is also angels.
Yeah.
And we discover that in a later passage. They deny angels. Let's answer the question of marriage. What does this verse tell us about marriage?
Well, it tells us about marriage that God has a specific design and a purpose for marriage and human interaction on earth.
Right.
That and we see this a lot in the Bible. We see the Bible kind of make a parallel between marriage, husband and wife, between Christ and the church, and it being a picture of an earthly covenant that is reflective of God's ideal relationship with man. Mm-hmm. And God uses that as a picture, but in eternity, we will be with God. Right. We'll be in relationship with God, and there's not a need for a visual non-eternal substitute for that.
Exactly.
So it shows us God. Of course, marriage is wonderful, and it is made by God. It's designed by God, but it's designed by God as a reflection of heaven and His will in relationship, but here on earth between men and women.
Exactly.
And so it's showing us that God has these displaying of properties of who He is in relationship to man, but they only go so far. But He is the fulfillment of all of that.
Exactly. So we're not given to marriage in heaven.
No.
So, and this is hard for people to take.
It is.
I love my wife dearly.
Absolutely.
I know you love your bride
profusely.
Dearly. And the idea of not being with my wife hits me. However, the fact that we are in Christ and we know that we will be with Christ in glory.
Yeah.
It overshadows all that.
Right.
And so that's the first thing. He's correcting that theological mindset. Now he's going to swing around. He's going to say a little bit more to correct their understanding of the scriptures as a whole. If you could read 26 for me.
All right.
26 and 27. I'm
26. Okay. But concerning the dead, concerning the dead that they rise, you have not read in the book. Have you not read in the book of Moses in the burning bush passage how God spoke to him saying, I am God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. He is not the God of the dead, but God of the living. You are therefore greatly mistaken.
All right. So again, he's circling back to that first thing. You know neither the scriptures The vocabulary here is I am the God of, not I was the God of.
Right.
Making it clear that in the days of Moses, Abraham, Isaac, and the days of Moses, Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob were alive. So my question for you, in this round of questioning, Jesus leaned into very detailed understanding of the scriptures. The irony is the Sadducees prided themselves on being purists when it comes to understanding the scriptures.
Right.
Yet Jesus, again, his response was from the very Pentateuch that they put supposed emphasis on.
Yeah.
What does this tell us about the importance of being in the scriptures, but also being teachable when dealing with others, and teachable in the fact of maybe we're wrong and being allowed them to teach us appropriately, but also being willing to teach people who are deathly wrong about what the scriptures actually say.
Right. I love what Jesus did here. He didn't just tell them that they were wrong.
Right.
He told them that they were wrong and asked them, have you actually read the parts that you say you believe?
Right.
And he gave them answers and understanding out of the portion that they prided themselves, like you said, on actually knowing and reading, and not just, hey, this is what I'm saying, but this is what the scripture that you say that you believe actually says.
Right.
So the important aspect of that is like you don't have a proper understanding of it yourself.
Right.
I'm not trying to give you something extra. I'm not trying to give you something that's outside of the scope of what you understand. Out of what Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the one that you say that you believe, this is where you're missing a boat. This is where you're missing truth. This is what you're misinterpreting it. And Jesus gives them an opportunity from their own study, from their own understanding, to have a bigger or broader, more understanding, in the spiritual aspect.
Right.
And it's good to be able to point that out from the scripture, but also give them an opportunity to know and understand the mind of God and what God intended when he said those things. Like, hey, you're not thinking about the resurrection, but look at what the Bible says here.
Right.
Look at what the Pentateuch itself says here.
Right.
Did you ever think about that? Do you ever consider that? Or have you become wrapped up in what you want to believe, and now you kind of erected a wall between what it's actually saying and what you want it to say?
Exactly. And I like what you said. Have we erected a wall? And I think we all do that sometimes.
Yeah, we do.
I think we all go, oh, this is, and there is an aspect where we go, I am firm in my truth, in the truth of the gospel, not my truth, but the truth.
Right.
And let's make clear, truth is truth. However, we have to understand that we are finite and we are fallible, but the scriptures are not. So we have to be willing to be genuine when we study them, to grow and to learn, and to surround ourselves with men and women of God who could teach us and help us to understand this differently. That's what the whole point of the whole passage of iron sharpening iron is all about. It's us learning to better ourselves and understanding. I am 41 years old, and I can promise you, I can look back at my 21, 22-year-old Dallas, who I thought I was, pretty intelligent. I knew I was dumb. I'll say that, because I surrounded myself with some intelligent people. I looked at them and go, I'm stupid. But I had no idea how stupid I was until, I'm years later I can look back at it.
Yeah, we don't know the distance that we have to cover sometimes when we first start.
Exactly.
I know I didn't.
Right. It's so, but that's that, and I think humility is the key for us to grow and to learn those things. But when we're dealing with people who are coming at it like what Jesus is doing, the key here really is, let's look at what the Bible actually says.
Yeah.
In context, with grace, as best as we can, walk this out. And next week, we're going to look at another question that somebody else came asking with a very different heart. And the way that Jesus handles it is also a bit different than the way that he just put straight these guys here. So that being said, we'll hear from you guys. Has it encouraged you? Has it challenged you? Reach out to us. mediahub@thbshreveport.com is the email address. You can reach out to us. Also, if you're in the Shreveport-Bossier area, we're an actual church, the Healing Place. We're at 8957 Kingston Road here in Shreveport. Come hang out. We have gatherings at 10 a.m. on Sunday mornings and 6:30 on Wednesdays. And next week, ladies and gentlemen, you can hear this guy preach on Wednesday at 6:30. So come hang out. Ladies and gentlemen, until next time, have a great week.